In this guide, we'll cover system health and maintenance. This will include system updates, backups, migrations, and diagnostics, which includes monitoring, debugging, and log analysis, which can assist in troubleshooting. Conducting regular backups on the Switchvox system is a crucial component in the Switchvox management, ensuring data integrity while giving you the ability to roll back should you encounter any trouble with the system that needs to be reverted, such as a failed backup, perhaps a failed hardware component, and is especially useful for migrating from one system to another. Let's start by discussing how to back up the Switchvox and create a restore point. To join me on this page, head up to Server, Maintenance, and then Backups. We'll start with creating a backup, which, as you can see, gives us quite a number of different options, with a few core components being non-optional. Additional components that are optional, however, would be denoted with the toggle switch active, mainly pertaining here to audio files as well as log files. So once you're satisfied with your options, you can hit Save Backup for a manual backup. In my case, this will be to a size of 11.8 megabytes. Now, you may have noticed that call recordings were not part of the Switchvox backup system, and that's because they are housed in the call recording settings and it can be done via FTP. That's something that we'll discuss in a later video. Our new backup has a timestamp as well as the size and the optional contents that were chosen, meaning anything that was not part of the core backup group. The Actions column provides us with a restore button, a download button, and a delete button. If you're familiar with system administration, you probably like to have a cold storage method, and that is why you would want to download a copy of this and keep that copy somewhere safe. Now, certainly we don't want to have to come into the Switchvox system each time we want to create a backup. We can do that on a schedule or an automatic backup. You can choose the frequency starting with the day of week, or leave it at day for every day, the time of day, format hour and minutes, the rotation schedule or number of backups to keep. When that number is achieved, the oldest backup will be deleted. You'll notice that here in the automatic backup section, the FTP settings configuration has appeared. That is a requirement for automated backups as they do not get stored onto the server themselves. In other words, FTP is required for automating backups on the Switchvox system. Just as with the manual backup process, you're going to choose the configurable options to specify what exactly we're backing up. Now, of course, if you have chosen things like sounds and greetings to be backed up as well as error logs, these will grow with size over the course of the Switchvox lifespan. Since we have no way to mitigate that, these backups can become quite large and therefore take over the entire disk space. If that disk space becomes full, the Switchvox will cease to operate. This is why the FTP offloading is required. Okay, the last option, upload and restore, is used when you're storing a backup file off of the system on a local drive, for example, and you'd like to utilize that backup file to restore the system. Then need to simply click on the dialog to select the file from the local storage. Advanced options will include restoring the custom SSLs and overwriting the server UUID. Generally, these options would be used in a migration setting where you're cloning a machine and you want networking and host information to be the same. For more information on this particular topic, go ahead and select the help icon to visit the Sangoma knowledge base article. I will note here that cloud Switchvox users will not have access to the backup system, as that's taken care of for you in the back end. Now that we're familiar with backing up the system, you should go ahead and do so before we get to our next steps, which will be updating the Switchvox. Let's start with our system updates to ensure we're getting the latest version of Switchvox, including updates, security releases, and feature enhancements. If we take a look under updates and subscriptions, our running version on this demo is 8.02, while the latest version is 8.1. I can get to the update location by hitting the View Updates button, or head over to Server. Under Maintenance, I've also got the Updates menu link from any other page. I will note that if you arrive at the updates page and you have a 401 unauthorized pop-up message, This generally indicates that your license information is not accurate or up to date, so that would be your point of troubleshooting if you do see that message. That would be under server registration. If all's gone well, we'll see an overview such as the one in front of me. Aside from the current version release notes and our subscription information, I'll come down to have the available updates with release information here as well. Go ahead and click on the latest version to find out more detail about what's been updated, what's changed, and if there's anything important that you'll need to know, that'll be included in the release notes. In addition to the core system updates, below we've got the Sangomaphone firmware update, so we've got different phone firmwares that we will be updating in the system as well. And there's also obsolete updates, things that will be getting removed. In this case, it's because we're skipping versions in order to achieve 8.1 from the current release of 8.02. We can, however, download those versions should we wish to, download and apply if you want to do an incremental upgrade rather than get to the latest version. I suspect that most people want to jump right to the latest version unless they have a particular need not to. So our actions are download and apply. And of course, remember to do a backup of the system before you do any updating. Pay special attention to the warning message that applying updates will drop all current active calls and log all members out of the queue. It'll also tie up the Switchvox temporarily so that new calls won't be able to come in or go out. Hit yes when you're ready to go forward. Okay, so I managed to successfully download the latest version of 8.1, and I've applied the updated version of Switchvox as well as the accompanying packages. So with our licenses and subscriptions up to date, as well as our packages, we can get started on our diagnostics, which will not only help us troubleshoot any issues on the system, but also get ahead of them with some proactive monitoring. For that, let's head up to server, and we're going to start off with connection status under the diagnostics. We currently have 5 tabs correlating to mostly anything that would be connected to the Switchvox system, starting with VoIP providers. So here we've got a rejected state on our trunk SIP station 2. It's also the cause of no latency. So if we had any type of rejected calls or calls just not coming through, we would go ahead and take a look at the VoIP providers. In this case, I may want to do some diagnostics here by clicking on the actions button. This is just an example of a diagnostic test that took place. Some of the information here may actually resolve your issues, and it's just nice to have it done all for you in one place. Now in my case, I purposely sabotaged the host name. Switchvox wouldn't know the exact host name of the SIP provider or the SIP trunk that I'm trying to use, so this one's actually a little bit more tricky, but I can just double check that and realize that it should say trunk 2 opposed to trunky. Moving over to SIP phones, this will be quite helpful in troubleshooting any issues with user connectivity, as I have a couple of extensions that are not online. Note that only SIP phones or desktop applications, mobile applications will appear in this list for valid SIP extensions, meaning virtual extensions will not appear in this list. Again, we can hit the diagnostics button, denoting whether it's an external or internal phone. Regardless of what the actual user issue is, this will let you know if they're online or not and help you in the troubleshooting process. For example, if you're unreachable, there's clearly a connection issue on the user side, the application is closed, etc. Whereas if the application is registered for the user and they're still facing some problems, then you'll be able to make some conclusions such as that registration or connectivity is not the actual issue in this particular user's case. Peered Switchvoxes, if applicable to you, will appear under here as well as their status. And if you are a legacy-only Switchvox eFax user, print jobs would be shown here. Now we can move on to current calls. So here I've got a concurrent call from extension 100, my extension, to 800, the IVR, and I can see duration, the state, as well as the audio codec format and the provider. In this case, it's internal. Of course, if it was an external call, you would certainly see the provider that was providing the route for this call in that space. I can also hang up the call directly from this screen as well. And that's helpful just for administrative purposes, as well as you might want to hang up a hung call. Our refresh intervals can be 30, 60, 90, or never, and we have an on-demand refresh now button just here. Let's move on to server information. The current status of my Switchvox memory is over the threshold, while the load and the disk are in good standing. Clearly in this case, I haven't allocated enough memory to the server to run this Switchvox instance. Having these server diagnostics therefore is crucial. When I'm under load, I will see the spike even more, and I could have the Switchvox cease to operate altogether. So I'm going to want to get ahead of this. Well, in this case, I'm going to want to react to this as soon as possible. With the Advanced Server Information tab, I can expand and see a snapshot from the Linux OS, where I'm seeing connected devices and peripherals. I'm also seeing the raw output of the memory, the df command, which is for disk utilization, ifconfig for networking, our routing table, DNS information, and our top command, which shows a list of all processes. So very handy to get into the server information in greater details, which is useful for a variety of different scenarios. Next, we'll revisit disk usage. As a Switchvox system administrator, you'll also want to keep an eye on disk usage. Starting with disk usage breakdown gives us a bird's eye view of the entire system storage. If you're an on-prem user, you'll have a certain disk space allocated to the Switchvox instance that you purchased, in my case around 50 gigabytes. And in either case, whether you're an on-prem or a cloud user of Switchvox, you'll want to make sure that you're managing and maintaining the disk space so that you don't run out, which would cease the operations of the Switchvox. I'm specifically interested in the green graph bar, which is the media. This will be our sound manager and our system recordings that have been added. Now, there are some defaults. You may add different language packs and different custom recordings as you go, and of course, different music on hold. Therefore, this is relatively easy to manage under the sound manager, where we can easily remove any non-system recordings that we've added. Of course, under Tools, Media, and Music on Hold, we can do the same for the music on hold. Call recordings can easily consume the most disk space. The solution to that is FTP backups, which is covered in the media management video later in this series. In blue, we have voicemail and faxes. Again, voicemails can easily utilize all of the disk space on the system, and there are ways to mitigate that, starting with extension creation. On each individual extension, we have the ability to modify after the fact, being that after the extension is created. Under advanced profile options, we can allocate a certain amount of disk space in megabytes to this particular extension for voicemail and fax. Now, you'll probably want to get ahead of this by using the extension template that you use to create these extensions under the same tab, Advanced Profile, and code that here. In yellow, we've got our backup storage allocation, which can easily be managed from the Backups menu section. Here we can actually download the backup that we've created to our local disk, and we can remove it with the delete button should we no longer need that particular backup. The next tab would be Mailbox Usage Breakdown. We can also see which user is utilizing more than an average user, and we could go into that extension and we could increase that storage limit. And this is a good bird's eye view again of the utilization on each extension. We can further manage the utilization with these disk usage settings, which are relevant to the users using the Sangoma softphone, as well as chat file attachments and the log rotation limits for both calls and queues. And we can even remove automatically mailbox contents based on the amount of months. So that should provide you with a good overall view of how to manage your disk space, get ahead of potential problems, and also troubleshoot any potential problems where the disk space is being utilized and how. I'll also mention that these disk usage settings are for on-prem users only, whereas Switchvox Cloud users will only have read access to the disk usage section. Next, under server, we have error logs. Error logs can be filtered to by date. In this case, I only have one particular error log, which was generated a few days ago pertaining to that memory capacity that we looked at earlier. in the resource monitoring. Clicking Advanced Error Logs, I can see non-critical logs that are generated daily. These warnings and notice are generated from the underlying SIP engine of Switchvox Asterisk, so what we're seeing here are SIP-based error and notices. An example here are just enumerations related to nefarious actors sending invites and option requests to the server. However, this can be used to weed out legitimate traffic and see what particular errors maybe a user is reporting or if they're having troubles registering and so on. And that advanced debugging is next under server. From here, we can start an on-demand packet capture useful for studying later in applications such as Wireshark or providing it to Sangoma support should they suggest you do so. So when you start, you can hit packet capture, or you can use the asterisk CLI, depending on what you want to capture and how. And furthermore, you can specify the duration of that capture, the verbosity, and if you want specific SIP messaging types. If you'd like to know about the session parameters, go ahead and hit the help icon at the top. When this is done, the system has generated my asterisk CLI debug log. I can come in here and hit download or of course remove it. Take note of the message at the bottom that does say that all sessions will stop and log files removed if the disk exceeds 90% capacity, so you do have some checks in place so as you don't exceed your disk space. You'll notice, well, when I went to the start debugging session, it did note my current disk usage here, so you can get an idea of how much you should capture, or if you should capture at all before addressing some of the steps we discussed prior on cleaning up disk space. It would undoubtedly be a huge help if the Switchvox was proactive and let us know when there was issues that arose, so we don't always have to log in to notice any problems. Well, luckily that's the case with notifications. If we head up to Tools, under Notifications, and take a look at the Alerts Manager, we have just a system here. Under Subscriptions, we can create an alert subscription. Simply enter the name and email of the person who will receive specific or all of the notifications that you want to include. So we have issues creating or transferring backups, issues with call recordings, notices when there's an emergency number that's dialed, such as a requirement also in the E911. Then we've got issues pertaining to faxes, peered Switchvoxes, scheduled reports, security, also that system load and disk space, and any issues pertaining to saving voicemails. I'll go ahead and set up an alert. So I've set up alert levels for error warning and info. Of course, I can modify these if I just want to know about the errors themselves and not get more frequent notifications for things that aren't crucial, critical, etc. Alert logs would be housed here so that at any time I can come back into the system and get a handle on what exactly the troubles were within this time period. So here I've got warnings related to failed login attempts. So I'm also getting alerts about changes on the system if I'd like to go through some aspects of the change log of the system itself and kind of look back at to if there was any changes that might be affecting the performance, or if something's not working anymore, I can go back and see some of the change history. Lastly, we'll look at tech support here, which was mentioned in the Getting Starting admin video. When requested to do so by Sangoma Tech Support, you can go ahead and enable that remote access and provide that 6-character registration code and set up a VPN connection depending on what tech support has requested from you, as well as the TSR or the technical service request. You should now have a solid understanding of the system health and maintenance, including debugging, troubleshooting, and backing up the Switchvox, which is crucial for any Switchvox administrator. For additional help resources or tips and tricks with the Switchvox, including anything that's not covered here, it can be found at help.sangoma.com. You can also check out some of the other videos in this Switchvox administration series. I hope to see you there.